So today we're going to go in and talk about malocclusions, or issues with a horse's mouth and their teeth. So if you would, please make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and please, if you have any questions, drop them below. I'll do my best to answer them. Or if I missed anything in this video and you have other questions that maybe you've heard of in the past, make sure to let me know. So we're going to visit the incisors really quickly and talk about the abnormalities, malocclusions, in the front of the horse's mouth. A malocclusion simply is an abnormality that they have, anything that's not of normal wear or normal balance in the horse's mouth. Our goal is to achieve occlusal equilibrium, and it's hard to do that with malocclusions. When they have malocclusions, it can cause behavior issues, it can cause poor health issues, and I've actually seen some malocclusions lead to death. It is imperative that you get your horse's teeth evaluated every 6 to 12 months to ensure that they're receiving proper nutrition and their teeth are nice and healthy. Typically, you want your horse's teeth to be straight across in the front so that they can excurge or lateral excursion side to side and be able to chew their food properly. Now, if there was a severe abnormality, which she has a slight smile, it's very small, but if she had a bigger smile, in order for her to slide over, she would have to open her mouth to get over the bottom portion of the smile. So in turn, that would allow more food to drop out of her mouth while she's trying to eat. And if you're dropping food, it's not getting into their stomach, they're going to lose nutrition absorption, obviously. So if she was smiling, it would be called a ventral curvature, and it's not what we want. The opposite of a smile is a dorsal curvature or frown. And same thing, in order to slide over, she would have to gap open to get over the curve of the upper incisors, and you do not want that. Another abnormality typically seen very easily in the horse's mouth is called a slant mouth. Now, had her incisors been a slant mouth, the lower would be higher and the upper here would be protruding lower, and it would look like an angle. It could be this angle, it could be this angle. It doesn't really matter if it's not straight, it's an abnormality. So slant mouth is another severe abnormality. They could chew heavier on one side. It can cause a lot more pressure on her TMJ area, which could travel to the rest of her body and cause pain in her front end and her high end, in her shoulders and hips. Severe abnormality that I've seen in horses is it looks kind of like an overbite. But we call it parrot mouth, and it usually sits like this. It really makes it hard and uncomfortable for the horse if it's not kept in check. They don't have any teeth occluding or touching each other to grind and keep their own teeth in wear or in check, and so when it's parrot mouth like this, it rips into their gums a lot of times, be really uncomfortable, and we have to do our best to make that horse comfortable. If it's a young horse, they possibly can go to an equine surgeon and get their jaw broke and reset, more than likely live a healthy, normal life. But as they get older, it's a little harder to perform that, and if they're middle age, it's just impossible to achieve that. Another opposite malocclusion from a overbite or a paramouth is called underjet, and it's where the lower jaw sits out further than the upper here, and it protrudes out. And again, you're not going to get surface occlusion, and so you're going to get hyper eruption, or the teeth, erupting out of the gum line sooner than they should be, and it can be very uncomfortable for the horse if they're wearing on their bar area or their interdental space. It can be really uncomfortable for the horse, and if not properly addressed, can cause a lot of damage to the palate or to the gums and cause bleeding and discomfort, which can lead, obviously, to behavior issues. Some of the malocclusions that you also can get on the incisors are called hooks. The hooks are typically located on the upper incisor right here in the corner. Now, I'm not going to go over numbering in detail today because I have a whole other video about horse teeth numbering if you want to look into that. But typically those hooks are located on your 103 and your 203 of your adult horses. They need to be knocked down. She has, little tiny baby, very minute little hooks here starting. It's really hard to see them. But had she been left alone and been able to live a long life, those would have developed into really big hooks, which have caused issues of her bringing her top jaw back properly, again, having to jar her mouth open because that hook would have been in the way and she couldn't slide her jaw back and forth properly. If you see a hook, call an equine professional to come out and get your horse's teeth done. Now, angle definitely is one of the issues horses have. Typically, angle abnormalities happen because we humans, mess up their normal way horse eats off the ground naturally. We tend to want to hang their feet up high because it looks better. They think the horse feed will stay cleaner, but honestly, you're doing an injustice to your horse by hanging or altering their natural position of eating off the ground. Those hooks develop pretty easy when you're hanging the feed, not only in your incisors here, they also develop on your premolars here, and it just prevents the horse from moving their mouth back and forth and can cause some damage. Also, and some pressure in their TMJ area, their pole area, again, can travel to the rest of the horse's body. The canines here, if she were to have them, they'd be located in the bars, but George here has canines and he has them right in the bars, and his are actually pretty dang sharp. And he had some flesh on his body or his bones here. These possibly, they're long enough and sharp enough that they could be digging into his gum line. They could be digging into his tongue, which would cause open lacerations had they been sharp enough and continuously ripping on the horse's gum. You can just buff those down, make them nice and round so they're not hurting anything. They serve no purpose in mastication or chewing the horse's food at this point. They were used, in the wild for fighting other horses. He definitely didn't have that issue. Now, mares can get canines as well. They're not as big or protruding or sharp as their male counterparts, and they really don't need to be addressed unless they're broken. At that point, they should be removed because they could be sensitive and causing the horse some discomfort. But if they're not broken, they're not in the way, they're not hurting anything, they're so small, they won't affect anything in the horse's mouth. Moving on to the rest of the horse's mouth and malocclusions, sharp hooks on the top here, or maybe lower ramps where they're ramped up at an angle, and they can prevent the horse from going forward and backward and chewing their food properly, masticating their food properly to get it ready to go down the throat into the stomach. When you're putting your bit in, you see a little tip of the horse's tooth protruding out further than the rest of the teeth, and that tells you have a hook and you need to get your horse's teeth floated. Common abnormalities in all the molars and all the arcade points, and those are the points that rub against your horse's cheek. Now, these points are so sharp that they actually can cut the horse's cheek and cause lacerations and ulcers on the horse's cheek. Not only will that cause some behavior issues because it hurts really bad, and anytime they chew, anytime they open their mouth, anytime you have them under bit and saddle, it's just aggravating that cheek cavity. Now, I have seen open lacerations before. Infections can set in if they're that severe. So this is something that can be easily avoided with routine care. In conjunction with the buccal points or the cheek sharp points, you can have lingual points or sharp edges along the tongue side here. These sharp points here on the lingual side of the horse's teeth actually can cut your horse's tongue. It can cause scarring, can cause tears, and also can cause ulcers and open lacerations again. Those can get infected, and we want our horses comfy and happy. So a next abnormality that is conjunction with the hooks coming in the front on the top premolars are hooks and ramps in the very back. They're really hard to see. A lot of professionals that haven't had extensive equine dentistry education can miss this. It's super imperative to get this. It's right in the curve of spee, or where the horse's jaw starts to curve up, and it's really close to the upper gum jaw line here in the horse's mouth, and actually can cause tearing and holes in the horse's upper jawline if it's not addressed. If it points up too high or ramps up too high, it actually can cause a laceration up there. You may see a horse when you're trying to stop them and they're gapping up and they're gapping open instead of tucking their nose down. Typically that is indicative of some sharp points or some discomfort in the mouth. So listen to your horse, watch their behavior. They're going to tell you a lot of things. Another issue horses have in their dental arcade are steps. There are waves, and there's ETR, which is excessive transverse ridges. Now, a wave is considered an abnormality or excessive height in 3 or more teeth in the dental arcade. In the opposing teeth on her upper jaw line, she's going to have a little bit of a recess, slightly opposing these teeth here on the lower jaw. Another malocclusion that horses have are steps. Steps usually is just one tooth in the dental arcade, so we're just going to pretend that her central molar was a step, the one high one in the middle. This tooth is the most recessed tooth in that wave, so it could be mistaken for a step just because it was so slight on the other teeth. This one actually has the biggest pocket, it's recessed the most, so I know the opposing tooth would be higher than the rest of the teeth in the dental arcade. Another abnormality horses tend to have ETR, or excessive transverse ridge. So the little ridges that horses naturally have to help grind the horse's food, they could protrude out more, which would decrease the occlusal surface that they have to grind their food. They would only be grinding on those high ridges. So it is important, if they have high ridges and sticking out, that you knock them down so subtly. They'll be able to break their feed down better so that when they get it to their stomach, they have better absorption because the food's broken down properly. You want to give them the best possible occlusal surface to chew on. Common abnormalities that horses may have throughout their lifespan is possibly a missing tooth. Maybe they fractured their tooth and the tooth had to come out, and the opposing tooth then has nothing to combat it, nothing to keep it in check, nothing to wear itself on, and it will hyper-erupt into the cavity of where the missing molar may be. Now, this is really important. Horses with missing teeth, they need to be seen a little more often than 12 months just to ensure that opposing tooth that is still in the horse's mouth is not hyper-erupting and causing a locked jaw or a locked mouth and causing issues with the other teeth working properly. Their teeth may need to be addressed every 9 months or 6 months, definitely more than every 12 months. Not only could they fracture their tooth and miss a tooth, maybe they're getting a little older. The tooth actually might expire and fall out, and then you might have a opposing tooth that's still there. And so you just have to keep that one in check as well, keep them comfortable. They're losing occlusal surfaces at that point when they're aging older and their teeth are falling out. They can still be a healthy, happy horse. Just make sure to keep them comfortable, keep the opposing teeth that are still there in check, and make sure no sharp edges form. You know, they can tend to get cups when they start wearing out and getting closer to the root tip, and those cups can become very sharp, a lot of edges, and you just want to round those out on the edges and make the horse as comfortable as possible. And when they do fall out, no worries, no harm. You may just have to switch their feed to something with a little bit more nutrition in it, like a senior feed, and you may have to soften it for them, you know, just like you would your grandma or grandpa, you know, and give them soft food. You may have to give them a little softer food, easily done by wetting it, adding water to their feed, which could be great for all ages of horses, but definitely horses with malocclusion or major abnormalities in their mouth. Thanks for watching. That's all I have today for malocclusions. If you have any questions or any other extreme malocclusion that maybe you came about and want to know more information about it, please drop it below. I'll be happy to address any questions or concerns you have. And thanks again for watching. Make sure to check out my next video I have coming up.